Hi, I'm Marcia Lehman, and I'm a Knox County Master Gardener. Today I'm not pruning any particular specimen. Today what I want to show you are where to make certain cuts. You may have heard us talk about a bark ridge. You may have heard us talk about a branch collar. You may have heard us use the term flush cut. Today's video is to explain each of those and show you, because I have finally found a really good specimen that shows a great branch collar. So I'm going to get out of the video and zoom in on the portions where I can show you what each of these things means. The first thing I want to discuss is the bark ridge. And if you look at this one, you see what looks like a little ridge, and it is a ridge of bark tissue. The better example is the one right below it here. This is a beautiful combination of bark ridge and branch collar. You see how the collar is kind of swollen and then the branch comes out through here. Now what's important is that the branch collar is special tissue. It is what holds the branch tightly to the trunk. So we never want to cut into the branch collar. What happens is this. Folks come in and they want to take off, let's not talk about this one. Let's say we want to take off this branch. Folks are tempted to come in and take it off here and make what is called a flush cut, because the cut is flush with the main trunk. So we would start cutting here, which you can clearly see is cutting into the branch collar tissue. Likewise, if I were to come up and make a flush cut from underneath, you can see how I would be removing this branch collar. What's important is that the branch collar is what allows a wound to heal. So never, never, ever make a flush cut. Now, the second mistake that folks will make is to actually cut into the branch collar, and we don't want to do that. What we want to do is to cut right outside the branch collar, and I'm going to mark where I would make that cut. I've taken a dry erase marker because it will wash off, and I've marked where I would make my cut, and you'll notice that I am outside the branch collar. The branch collar is this swollen section, and you can see the green mark is slightly beyond that, and here is where I would want to make the cut. Now also notice that it's not directly around here. The bottom side looks like it sticks out a little bit, and that's because we want to make our cut directly perpendicular to the branch. We want to do that to make a round cut, not an oval cut. And so for many years, the prevailing wisdom was to cut at a 45-degree angle, and the thought was that that would get it to shed water and reduce rot. We want to make it perpendicular across the branch because that makes the smallest wound. So where I have marked this with the green dry erase is where I would make the cut, and you will see that it looks like it's a little further out at the bottom than it is at the top, and that is intentional. So that's the basics of never make a flush cut, never cut into the branch collar, always preserve the branch collar and make the cut perpendicular to the branch that is being cut, and then what happens is the branch collar, that special tissue, will close around that. And on a branch this size, which is about 1 inch in diameter, that will probably heal in 1 to 2 years. And it'll look like a little bit like a donut, but will eventually close over. There's one other thing I want to address in this video, and that is when we're not making a cut at the main trunk, and we're making a cut somewhere else along a stem, where do we make that cut? I've moved the camera to focus on some smaller branches and to talk about where we make the proper cut. But I would first point out that even on the smaller branches, you have what looks like a little miniature version of a branch collar. So you would make the same cut just outside the branch collar and not cut into the branch collar. Now, when you want to cut in between branches, what often happens is here's a branch, and there's one coming out the backside here. Someone would be inclined to cut halfway in between. What happens then is everything from there down to this next branch will die. And in that process, it doesn't compartmentalize because there's no branch collar tissue there. And so you end up with a dead stub. And that's why often in a pruning video you see me say, well, we'll clean up some old pruning cuts. They were cuts that were made in between branches, and then this part died back. So when you're making a cut to reduce the length, you always want to come back to where a branch comes off of that. And that's where we would make the cut. So for this one, if we wanted to shorten this for whatever reason, I would make the cut right above where this branch attaches. For this one, which comes out the back, but I can bend it around so you can see, we would make the cut right above it. And again, when you look really closely, there's a little miniature version of branch collar tissue there. And then that wound will heal over. But the last thing you want to do, the thing you want to avoid, is making cuts between branches and then leaving stubs that are going to die. So that's it. Never make a flush cut. Never cut into the branch collar. Always protect that branch collar. Make the cut just outside the branch collar and make that cut straight across. Forget the old advice of 45 degrees. Your goal, particularly on larger branches, is to make the smallest possible wound. And the way to do that is to make it perpendicular to the branch. That's it today. As I say, not a specific specimen, but just a little bit more detail and hopefully a good enough close-up that you can see what we're talking about when we talk about branch collar tissue, flush cuts, and why we don't want to make those. Hope you learned something today. Thank you for joining us.